Right now we're in this middle period called Syosset, the counting of the Omer. So tonight's class is called Spiritual Growth Amongst World Chaos. Times of world chaos might seem a little selfish to be focusing on our spiritual growth. But I assure you that now is the best time for it. There's a concept in Jewish mysticism that teaches us that the essence of every Jewish soul is really tied one to the other. Many times I often say, if you could take an MRI of my soul and an MRI of your soul, you get the same exact reading, you get the same exact picture, you get the same exact magnetic resonant image of our spiritual self. And so it shows us something very deep about each other, that we're all interconnected. My behavior does not happen in a bubble, nor does yours. Each one of us has our unique and specific job to do. And that job is not just for my own benefit, or for my family's benefit, or even for my community's benefit. Everything every other Jew does affects the entirety of the Jewish people. We are all intertwined, each one of us. Another way to put it is, you might say, Kol Yisrael Ravim Zelazeh. Every Jew is responsible one to another, as it says in the Torah. Meaning, say, I'm responsible to you and you're responsible to me. But that goes not just skin deep, but it goes spiritual also. Meaning that we're all part of a greater macrocosm. We're all part of a critical mass. That what I do here affects a Jew I've never met before. What a Jew does in Israel affects me. What happens in Australia to a Jewish person affects me. Everything happens. Oh, some crazy thing is happening here on my end over here. Everything happens for a reason. Everything happens for a distinct purpose. And everything affects one thing to another. So the fact is, my spiritual pursuits, my spiritual awareness, my working on myself to become more spiritual, more connected, holier, affects you as well. It affects each one of us. So what each one of us do has an effect on the other. Seems like my video cut out, huh? I don't know why. Please give me a shout out if you can see me. But for some reason on my end it looks like my video is cut out. Okay, we'll keep going anyway. It says on my webcam's working fine. So the fact of the matter is, we see the world as it is right now, and it's a place of chaos. It's a world we never thought we'd wake up to, a world we never thought we'd live in, a world that is showing its true colors to us, showing us the latent hate for the Jewish people, just for the mere sake of being Jews. Regardless of what's going on in Israel, but the anti-Semitism in the world today is a world that I've never seen in my lifetime, and that I think most of us who were not alive in 1939 through 1945 would also say they've never seen as well, unless maybe you lived in communist Russia until the 1989. So this that we're focused on our spiritual side today is more apropos than ever. Because if you look at the reality of the situation that we find ourselves in, there's very little we can do physically to be able to change the situation. There's very little that we can do. Let's see if we're live here. A message. So there's no video. There's very little that we can do to change the situation physically. Obviously, we can post on social media. We can talk to our local politicians, at home. We can, show up for each other physically as a community, as a people, as American Jews. Most of us, I assume, are watching are American Jews. But there's very little we can do to change the narrative, to change the situation, and to convince anybody of anything. Because anti-Semitism is one thing we know is baseless hatred. There's no rhyme or reason for it, other than the pure, unadulterated hatred for Jewish people. Not that every non-Jew is anti-Semitic, but those who are really have no rhyme or reason for their hatred. Whatever the circumstances bear out to bring out their anti-Semitism, they use those circumstances to persecute us, to use us as their scapegoat for whatever negative experiences they're having. So if the fact of the matter is that physically we don't have an ability to change the situation, the circumstances, what are we left with? Well, we're left with spiritual availabilities to us. And if we're really honest with ourselves, although we don't see it, they're most effective. And the more we strengthen ourselves as individuals and strengthen ourselves in our connection to Hashem, His Torah, and even most to each other, the more we'll be able to not only weather this storm, but we'll successfully be able to stand and overcome the test that we find ourselves in. We'll be able to overcome these circumstances we find ourselves in and come out on the other side much, much better. So everything we know is divine providence. Everything is hashgacha pratis. Everything happens for a distinct reason. And we find ourselves now between the period of Passover and Shavuos. The Jewish people left Egypt on Passover and received the Torah on Mount Sinai 49 days later. This happened as one contiguous chain of events. Meaning that Moses, when he took the Jewish people out of Egypt, they were brought out for the express purpose of receiving the Torah on Mount Sinai. They were brought out for the express purpose of becoming God's people after they traversed the splitting of the sea and to receive the Torah on Mount Sinai 49 days later. And they were well aware of it. In fact, they were counting down the days. They counted the days till they would receive the Torah on Mount Sinai. And on that 50th day, they received the divine blueprint for all creation. This 49-day period is called Syosset. It's called Syosset because Sphira literally means to count. But Sphira also has a relationship with the word sapir. You can hear it. Sapir means to shine, to radiate, to illuminate. When we count the Syosset, it's not merely just the counting each day in, day out of the Syosset, but rather the point is to illuminate one of our personal character traits that each individual person has, and to highlight them, to bring them to the forefront, and to cause them to shine. So each one of us, as we go through this period, and we count the days of the Omer, the point is individual self-refinement. And again, that individual self-refinement is not only relegated to the individual, but actually has a critical effect on the whole, on the mass. And so when we count the Sfira, each day we count a different midah, a different character trait. And each character trait is inter-included in another character trait. Let me explain more simply. There's 49 days, thereby 7 weeks of 7 days between Passover and Shavuos. Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, teaches us that there are 7 emotional attributes to our soul. In totality, there are 10 sfirot, there are 10 attributes of our soul, and those are divine, godly attributes. The 3 higher attributes are attached to the intellect, are seated in the mind. They are called Chabad, like the namesake Chabad, Chochma Bina Das, which means wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. Wisdom, like the flash of intellect. The Bina, the understanding, the multitudinous applications of that flash of wisdom. And then the Das, the decisive factor that actually informs our behaviors, the connection point between mind and heart, between mental and emotional faculties. The 3, 7 lower are emotional faculties. They're seated in the heart, mostly, but also they're anthropomorphically laid out on the body of a human being as well, meaning that kindness is the right hand, discipline is the left hand. And those 7 attributes are chesed, kindness, gevura, discipline, tiferes, harmony or balance, netzach, which is victory, which is the desire to conquer, hod, which is subordination, acknowledgement, yesod, which is foundation, stability, and finally malchus, which is kingship. And malchus being almost like a mirror that reflects everything that is put before it. So being the lowest, it reflects all the higher 9 attributes that come before it and reveal it downward, reveal it into our world. So what does this all mean? These 7 emotional attributes are what we count each day of the Omer. Each week of the 7 weeks is characterized by a different character trait. And as that character trait is expressed specifically through another one of the other character traits. Yeah? I know you can't see, but it's a little video. So each one of the character traits we have is inter-included in the other. Each one of the character traits we have is expressed specifically through the others. And I'll give the example. The first day of the Omer, the second night of Pesach, we count chesed shebechesed, kindness of kindness. The second day, we express the discipline of kindness. The third day, the balance of kindness. And each day we go through the 7 emotions as they are specified within the greater emotion that characterizes that week. So this all sounds a little bit complicated, but each day, if we count, it takes only 2 minutes. And we see inside the prayer book in most Chabad Sidurim, it's on page 341. You can find it online. Now they have apps that remind you to count each night with a little bit of a meditation sometimes associated with it to get you on board. But what is it really telling you? It's telling you that the specificities of your soul as they expressed, the details of the soul are very important. Each one of them are necessary to be refined. All, of course, leading to the giving of the Torah on Mount Sinai. All, of course, leading to the refinement of our souls. But really what it's doing is reaching that moment before Sinai, where it says the Jewish people encamped around Mount Sinai and got about to get the Torah, Ish echad belev echad, as one person with one heart. We were all like one human being with one heart. The unity amongst the Jewish people was so great that they all could have been considered one organism with one heart. Why does it say one heart? Why does it not say one mind? Because the heart is the seat of the emotions of the Syosset that we count leading up to Shavuos. And the heart, is very temperamental. The mind can be cold and calculated, and it can take a lot to change our minds. But our feelings are much easier tampered with. Our emotions are much more fleeting and temporary. One minute I can feel inspired, the next minute I can feel tired and depressed. Each day could be each moment really can be a different expression of emotion. So when it says the Jewish people encamped by Mount Sinai, and they were like one person with one heart, it's a powerful connection that we all felt. That so much so that it affected even our emotions, even our heart. We were on such a level of unity that each one of us was all part of the greater whole, and it was recognizable. It was apparent. It was very real. And so when we come to the counting of Syosset, we realize that we're not just an individual as a Jew in 2024 that's at bay to forces around us. And we have no pull, we have no say, we have no outlet. But rather, in a world of chaos, in a world of turmoil that we find ourselves in, the best way to counterbalance this chaos is to go inside and to rectify. In Kabbalah, there's two major forces that come to play within a person that are in the spiritual realms, and we're constantly wrestling with these two forces. One is called tohu, which means chaos, and the other is called tikkun, which means healing, or repair, or balance. And these two forces are found within us at all times. The question is, which of these forces is exerting itself externally, is expressing itself at any given moment? There's a famous aphorism the Rebbe said, I believe in the 90s, I believe it was 91, that in order to bring Mashiach, we need to take the Eres, the Tohu, in the Kelim of Tikkun. We need to take the lights of chaos, of very lofty, high levels that may seem chaotic, and to bring them into vessels of repair. To bring them into vessels that balance them out. So this concept, when we see a world that is clearly chaotic, that makes literally no sense. We read headlines, we see behavior of the world, of politicians, college students, entertainment figures, and we see behavior that makes no sense. Depraved, sick, and it can lead us to be disillusioned. But our goal is to heal and repair. Is to call it is what it is. It is what it is. It's sick. It's depraved. But now we see the truth of the matter. This is not something that is new to us. Unfortunately, it's not something that is foreign to us on the scale of history. It's just something foreign to us that we're experiencing now. And it can feel like very disheartening. Like we've lost some of our innocence. We've lost some of that security we once felt. Maybe there's public figures who we once looked up to who are now behaving in a way that we can't even fathom how depraved and anti-Semitic they are. Perhaps there's institutions like that. But the fact of the matter is, all of the healing that needs to be done lies with us. As Jews, we don't change with the times. The times may change, but the way we react, the way we conduct ourselves is tried and true. Thank God we have a Torah. And on the deepest level, we have Chassidus and Kabbalah, the inner dimension of the Torah, that are constantly informing our experiences for self-refinement, for self-betterment. And we have to understand imminently, as soon as possible, impress it upon ourselves that we hold our own fate in our own hands. Obviously, it's Hashem that holds it in his hands, but he has given it to us within our power to be able to combat forces of negativity within us. You know, today there's a popular movement of victimhood, that victims, the weaker, are always right. In Judaism, we never embrace this. Why is that? Because we never feel a victim to anybody except for God. When there's a problem with us as Jewish people, we don't blame the nations of the world. We don't feel oppressed. We look inside. We take stock. We look at ourselves. We go inside. Because we know if that we are God's people and we have Hashem's Torah. And of course we have our holy land and we have each other. Then the answer lies with us. It might be easy to blame institutions, countries, politicians, celebrities, entertainment figures, our neighbors, whoever it may be, for what we're going through. But the answer to healing it lies with us. How we conduct ourselves. It's an auspicious time to be a Jew right now. Very auspicious time. During one of the great wars in Israel, I believe it was the Yom Kippur War. There was a rabbi in Australia, and he said to the Rebbe, "What do I tell my congregation? What do I tell people?" The Rebbe answered, "You tell them whatever you want to tell them, because now's the time where every Jewish person is ready to make drastic changes in their lives, to become more observant, to keep Torah and mitzvahs. Tell them to keep kosher. Tell them to keep Shabbos. Tell them to keep family purity. Tell them to keep all the mitzvahs, because now is a time where everyone understands that it's a time, an auspicious time, for tremendous transformation. When people are feeling anxiety and nervous, and perhaps disconnected, the truth is there's many of us who feel much more connected. There's many of us who feel much more inspired. There's many of us who feel very, very empowered and very strong and more committed than ever to God's plan. And that is what a true person of conviction, not just belief, but trust in God, that's how we react to events that are around us. We know that everything comes from Hashem. Everything comes from God. There is not anything that is outside of God's purview. And so if that is in fact the case, and that God gave us a Torah by which, a blueprint by which to work on the world, to refine the world, to make the world in fact a better place, then we have all the success we need in our own hands. We have all the powers and abilities we have in our own hands. And the fact is, now's a time of great self-refinement, of great personal growth, a time of great support from Hashem and great support from each other. Before this horrible Simchas Torah war and massacre that happened, you had all different types of Jews. Religious Jews, secular Jews, Western Jews, Eastern Jews, Sephardic Jews, Ashkenazi Jews, Israeli Jews. And in Israel you had this party and that party politically. Ish echad v'lev echad. We're all becoming one people with one heart. And it's an auspicious time for all of us to do the inner work that we so greatly need. During the 6-day war in Israel, which actually is the anniversary of which is coming up at the end of this month on the Jewish calendar, it was a time, I wasn't alive then, it was before my time. It was a time of great arousal amongst every single Jewish person. It was a time when every single Jewish person felt as if they were on the same page. You know, in the Holocaust, the Jews in America were sleeping well. Thank God my family was not affected physically. And unfortunately, a lot of Jews slept through the Holocaust, literally. While Europe was burning, we slept. And while Jews were left behind the Iron Curtain in Russia, they also slept. And while Jews were suffering at the hands of the Iranian Revolution and the Moroccan Revolution, they also slept. Or maybe they didn't know. You could say, to be nice, they didn't know about what was going on in those places. If they were connected and they had eyes in their heads as Jews, they knew. But a lot did not. Today we can't say that. Today there's not a Jew who's sleeping anymore. There's not any Jew out there who schläft sich, as they say, is sleeping through this. There's something we're all experiencing as a total nation. There's something we're all experiencing together. So the fact is, what are we doing about it? Every mitzvah that we do is in fact eternal. Our Torah tells us that anything that has holiness, that has sanctity, that we do is eternal. It leaves it a mark. It leaves a residual effect on the world. This, so we don't see it, is really the secret of our exile. The exile we find ourselves in is not merely outside of Israel in a diaspora geographically, but the worst exile we possibly feel is feeling exiled from Hashem, exiled from our Creator, outside of the holiness of God Himself. That when I put on tefillin, I don't feel godly. This is the greatest exile a person could feel. How could God give a mitzvah and a soul in a body choose to do that mitzvah and yet not feel it, and yet not sense its holiness? Sometimes we feel it, sometimes we don't. But the true atomic, cosmic effect that every mitzvah really has is not felt. And this is the greatest exile. This is the greatest darkness that we feel. This is the worst experience a person can have. To have a creator. And our creator, we don't feel him. We don't sense him. Yet he gives us laws. He gives us mitzvahs. He gives us a way to live. He gives us a way to connect. And we don't experience it. We don't feel it. It's not apparent to us. We have a God that we don't see. We have a God that we don't hear. A God that we rarely feel. A God that we don't understand. This is the greatest exile. This is the greatest darkness and diaspora we have. Not to mention the horrors of what our brothers and sisters in Eretz Yisrael went through on Simchas Torah, as they say, October 7th. But we do know, and we are assured, that when Moshiach comes, all eyes will see their Creator. All physicality will call out to God, to Hashem. We will see with physical eyes an experience of the divine. And it all is predicated on all of our work, all of our service, all of our mitzvahs that we're doing now while we don't see Hashem, while we don't see God. And the fact of the matter is, right now, our prophet has told us and assured us that we're the last generation of exile and the first generation of redemption. We are that generation of Mashiach. And we're so close. We're literally on the threshold of exile that these last waning moments are the most important. These most darkest moments. These moments when we almost see no way out, that our world is turned upside down and is chaotic and is depraved and is immoral and is disgusting. Now's a time of purity for us. Now's a time of spirituality for us. Now's a time when we can easily get on the bandwagon of Jewish life. On one hand, the world seems most unfriendly to a Jew. But on the other hand, it's most friendly to a spiritual Jew. Physically, it's never been easier to obtain kosher food. It's never been easier to observe Shabbos, take off from work Friday night till Saturday night. It's never been easier to send our children to a Jewish school. That's an easy decision these days based on the school systems. Public schools and colleges, we see the depravity and the immorality Not to mention lack of character, but literally depraved attitudes. It's easier than ever to make that decision, even if it's not so easy financially, but there's help. It's an amazing time where we have all the availability, all of the spiritual resources physically available to us now. We're richer than ever as Jews, materially and spiritually. There's an app on your phone for counting the Syosset that will remind you when to count. Will give you a meditation of deep Jewish mysticism right there in your pocket. Websites, classes, Torah, Hebrew, English. You can just jump in whenever you want. It's an amazing time to be a spiritual Jew. There's a Chabad house on almost every corner in the world, with a minion that'll give you the page numbers and tell you when to stand and when to sit, and have a kiddush with delicious food afterwards and great people. It's the best time ever to be a Jew, to be a spiritual Jew, and to engage in that self-actualization that this time of year really affords us. We're about to receive the Torah for the 3,336th time on Shavuos. God willing, we'll discuss more about that in the upcoming weeks. But this time of year, it's almost like the wind is at our back as far as self-refinement goes. We have a lot of help. God gave us a distinct stepping stone every day of the Sphira to be able to refine ourselves, to work through our character traits, to work through the negative character traits, and to enhance and better the positive character traits. And this is what Syosset affords us. And when we look at the world outside, naturally it's spring. The weather gets more beautiful. There's more light. The increase in light, Kabbalah tells us, is a sign that there's more godliness in the world. It's easier physically, so therefore it's also easier spiritually. There's more light, we have to increase in light. The light is on our side. And this time of year, when we're counting towards Syosset, we're getting towards one of the highlights on the mystical Jewish calendar, which is called Lag BaOmer. God willing, next week, we're going to give a whole class on Lag BaOmer, the Rashbi, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism. So that will be, God willing, next week. There's a lot we can learn about our current situation from our past and our history. But even if we look at contemporary circumstances, we see that as Jewish people living in the current modern age, there's a tremendous movement all around us, even before Simchas Torah, even before October 7th, of Jews returning to their faith, of Jews becoming more and more observant. Many of you know that I wasn't raised religious in my childhood and young adult life, but there's thousands more like me, and probably like you, that maybe weren't raised observant, but have chosen a pathway towards deeper spirituality. And those of you out there that maybe were raised observant, were raised with Torah and mitzvahs, it's time to deepen that connection. So you might say, Rabbi, how can I change? I'm at whatever age I'm at. I'm 50 years old, I'm 60 years old, I'm 70 years old. Change at my age. Syosset Omer has a lesson for us. In the counting of the Omer, each day is dependent on the prior day, just like walking up a staircase. You can't get to the 10th stair without the 9th stair before it. But yet, this that we're in the Sphira, and we're already about 20 days in, doesn't stop you from jumping in right now. You can get on board. Even though we're over 20 days in. How is that possible? Because each day stands on its own. Each day has its own unique light that shines, that it's our job to refine and to get in touch with and to polish and to refine. And so similarly in the span of our lives, I'd say, how can I jump in now to Jewish life? I'm 70 years old. Now to change? I always ate this way. Saturday I play pickleball, I go to work, I do this. What can I change now? The answer is, of course you can. You can jump in anytime. It is never too late for a Jew to do tshuva, to return to Hashem, to return to Torah mitzvahs. And we use the word return because we see that no Jew is ever outside. You just have to return back in. It's never to find it because it was always found. The pristine soul of a Jew is always intact. There's things that cover it up. There's things that conceal it. There's things that might obscure it. Or there might have been circumstances that never even created an available moment to get in touch with it. But yet, alas, at any given moment, one can tap into that pristine soul that they have. One can do the inner work and the outer work in actual Torah observance and mitzvahs to get in touch with their soul. And that brings everybody on board. The rising tide will lift all the ships. And that more and more people are getting on board. More and more people are realizing that it's up to us, that it's up to you, that it's up to the individual, and that we see and we look around us and we see a movement. We see a transformation of the Jewish world that are all getting on the same picture. They're all coming on board. We're all part of this greater experience that is bigger than any one of us, but in fact needs each and every one of us as an individual. And this is wholly important because the eventuality is we're going to see our righteous moshiach. We're all going to be reunited with our loved ones. We are going to see the advent of a messianic era in which all the nations of the world will be subordinate and every Jew will be free to learn Torah, and all the nations of the world will also call out to Hashem. They'll also see the inherent goodness and morality in the world. As foreign as that may seem to us at this moment, our prophets assure us of this. The Rebbe contemporarily assures us of this now. And the more we affirm it in ourselves, the more we study these topics of Mashiach and redemption, the more we can look at the world with a proper lens, from a proper vantage point, and be able to see that the world in itself is getting ready for the coming of Mashiach as well. And that all we're seeing right now is almost like two wrestlers going at it. If you have two wrestlers going at it, and one wrestler is about to be victorious over the other, he's about to pin his opponent. The one who's about to be pinned tries with all his strength, with all his might, to get up off the mat and even do dirty tricks and do whatever he can so that he's not pinned down. This is a great metaphor for the way we see the world today. The forces of darkness the forces of chaos and immorality and depravity are about to be pinned down. And they're just rearing their last strength, their last ugly head in full glory, so we can see clearly that they're wrong, so we can see clearly that they're dark, and also see clearly that we have light on our side. We have morality, we have goodness, we have Hashem, we have Torah. We have a divine mandate to make this world a dwelling place for God. And this is in fact our job. So we should not be depressed or have anxiety about the state of the world. We should see it for what it is. Darkness is giving its last gasp for air before it's about to be pinned down by forces of light, by forces of goodness, by forces of morality. And our last acts of goodness and kindness can for sure tip the scales, and we can pin our opponent finally once and for all. And that will for sure usher in a world that is good for the entire universe, the entire world. And that is the world of Mashiach. So we'll leave it there. And thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate you tuning in. I apologize for the video feed. But please like and share. And you can listen to the audio when you're in your car or wherever you are. And God willing, I'll also put up the video on YouTube as well. Have an amazing week. Have a great Shabbos. Moshiach now.